Twitter and extremism and terrorism. We already know extremist groups like ISIS and Al-Shabaab have taken to social media sites to try to recruit new members with a special emphasis on Western Muslims. But what role should or can these sites take in weeding out the accounts of terrorist groups? This topic recently took a turn when militant groups issued death threats to my friend, the Twitter co-founder, Jack Dorsey, when Twitter deleted some 2,000 ISIS-related accounts on Twitter. The Rap's Itay recently wrote about this in a piece entitled, "How Twitter May Have Helped Ignite ISIS Firestorm." Let's find out more as he joins us on this edition of Politicking. You recently wrote that article. Explain, elaborate a little for me.
Well, here's the thing. We know that ISIS has been using social media. We know that because there's a new study that just came out this week from the Brookings Institute that really looked at how far they go and how much they use social media. They found about 46,000 accounts that have been used by ISIS in a span of 3 months, I think from September to December of 2014. So, and this is just what they found. They estimate it could be up to 90,000. Twitter has so far deleted 2,000 accounts a couple of weeks ago, which as you mentioned, started this whole firestorm. And I guess that ignited a debate. How far should social media companies go and try and police this? Because we know from Facebook and YouTube, who have done a better job at this, that they've been a little more active in trying to cancel out these accounts. Twitter has so far been sort of on the fence. They put the pressure on ISIS when there's a lot of media reports surrounding it, but then when those media reports die out, they stop canceling those accounts. So even though 2,000 accounts is a good first step, we know that there are many more accounts that are being used.
Itay, you were born in Israel, right?
Born and raised.
You broadcast, you're a print journalist, you've been on New York One and CBS News, you have articles in Salon and the Daily Beast and Out Magazine, you work for the Rap. What got you interested in this topic?
Well, I was in Israel in the last war, during the last war in this past summer. And one of the things that was interesting to me was, and I wrote a whole piece on that for the Daily Beast at the time, is how Hamas was using their expertise in hacking into cell phones and hacking into Facebook pages. They took hostage, or claimed to have taken hostage, an Israeli soldier, which is a very sensitive topic for Israelis, because you know, Israel, everyone is a soldier. Your son, your daughter, your father, your mother, everyone has gone to the army. It's mandatory. I did. I went for 3 years. And so when you take a hostage in Israel, you're not just taking a soldier, you're taking someone's son, someone's daughter. And since everybody can relate to that, that usually makes big headlines in Israel. And they basically found a body. It ended up being that they found a body, took some of his possessions, and then hacked into his Facebook page and used his Facebook page to communicate with Israelis and try and use it as a scare tactic. And so that was really interesting to me, because all of these things didn't occur even as recently as 2 years ago during Operation Cast Lead. So we're talking about just in the last couple of years, and you know, everyone seems to be so much more on Facebook. You have it on your cell phones, you have it on smartphones. Even smartphones weren't that available, especially on the Palestinian side back then. So things are advancing very quickly.
Twitter says it has suspended thousands of accounts believed tied to ISIS. Do you like what Twitter is doing?
You know, I spoke to a couple of experts, including the author of the study from the Brookings Institute, and I asked him, how would you grade their performance? And he said to me he would give them a C+, in the sense that he liked the fact that they were doing what they were doing, but the way he thinks it should happen is it should happen on a more regular basis, it should be more transparent, and they should be doing more, as he put it, to provide a safe place for its user. This has put Twitter in a very difficult position. You cooperate too much with a government, and you're going to get the anger from people who are, you know, advocates of free speech and privacy issues. If you don't cooperate enough, then you have people who want ISIS taken down angry as well. So there's this whole sort of difficulty in maneuvering that, especially with this new sort of technology that we're just sort of waking up to.
Should Twitter take the death threats seriously?
You know, I asked that to the terrorist experts, and I asked that to Steve Emerson, who himself is a terrorist expert who himself has been the subject of many threats from terrorists. Yes. And he said to me, yes, you should always take these threats seriously, obviously. I think Steve Emerson at one point when you had to go and meet with him, you'd have to go, they blindfold you, and you wouldn't be able to know where you're going. So yes, absolutely, you should take these threats seriously, although it's hard to say at this point. It's a little early.
What about those who say, hey, it's open, it's free speech, why stop anything?
And there are a lot of people who think that. And by the way, a lot of users who think that. So Twitter is also worried about you start policing Twitter too much, and people are going to leave Twitter. Because one of the reasons why people like Twitter, say, versus Facebook or YouTube is the fact that there is that component of free speech. Because on Facebook, if you put something that's a little too racy, a little too controversial, you will have your post taken down by the powers at be. That doesn't happen so much in Twitter, and is one of the reasons why a lot of people turn to Twitter away from Facebook. So, yes, I do believe that there's a line that you don't want to cross where you start becoming a nanny of Twitter. At the same time, when you have ISIS using your accounts, your social media network, you have to be very careful, because one of the things that we're realizing is this battlefield, this virtual battlefield, is not something that we can overlook. It's becoming one of the most important things when it comes to warfare anywhere in the world, including what we saw in Israel and the Palestinians.
All advances have drawbacks. If we've never had an airplane, there'd never been an airplane crash. Are you concerned? We discussed this with Senator Sanders. You've heard that. Are you concerned about privacy in this new world?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I, as a user, get upset when I see too much policing from social networks. At the same time, I do believe that if you are going to have a social network that's going to be used by the entire world, and you take pride in the fact that it starts revolution. You know, when the Arab Spring started, Twitter took a lot of pride in the fact that these revolutionary sort of fragments of the Arab Spring were using Twitter to get everyone going. That's something you have to also make sure that you're not putting anyone at risk. And
Twitter found the Boston people who set up the bombings, right?
Exactly. So, and by the way, one of the things that the experts talk about, which is really interesting, is you sometimes don't want to take down those accounts, but you definitely want to monitor them. So what they're saying is when you take down those accounts, you lose sometimes very important leads. Some of the best leads that they've gotten, according to these experts, is from Facebook pages and Twitter accounts. So you don't want to necessarily cancel all those accounts, but you definitely want to make sure you have control over them.
You grew up in a country that lived in fear all the time, right?
Yeah.
I asked my late friend, the great lawyer Edward Bennett Williams, if he was as he looks at the world, if he was an optimist or a pessimist. He said, of course I'm a pessimist. I'm smart. Are you a pessimist?
I'm not. I think of myself as a realist. I like to think that people are inherently good, but I also like to think, or I think that people are also, you can't ignore the fact that not everyone is. And so you have to make sure that even though things I think are going in the right direction, there's going to be some issues that you have to look at. You look at the peace process with Israel. There was so much hope in 1993. Yeah. You know, that has barely, doesn't even exist anymore. People in Israel are a lot less optimistic, I would say. I'm not sure they're quite pessimistic yet, but they're definitely a lot less optimistic.
Thank you so much, Itay.
My
Great
pleasure.
seeing you. We hope to have you on a lot more.